All right, now joining us live here on the Anik and Florian podcast, and it brings us great privilege to do this as we go 4 wide. I mean, look at this shot. Everybody is here. It's green corner, and you may recognize Dr. June Chin, who has been with us before, LEAFWELL's Chief Medical Officer. Also with us today for the first time, and very happy to have her, the founder and CEO of LEAFWELL and cancer survivor as well, Emily Fisher. June, Dr. June, Emily, great to have you guys with us. How are we doing?
Great. Thank you for having us. It's great to see you, John, Kenny. It's great to be here.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having us again.
It's our pleasure. So the green corner, as we're now calling it, so several times a year, you guys are going to be joining us. Certainly Dr. June Chin will be with us, and hopefully Emily when her schedule allows. But there's no doubt that what you guys are doing industry-wide is, I think, changing how people view cannabis. And in the world of healthcare, obviously things are changing rapidly when it comes to medical cannabis. So here we have a doctor, we have a patient, and a CEO. So Emily, I guess I'll start with you off the top. What was the impetus for starting LEAFWELL, and where are you, I guess, relative to your initial expectations?
Well, I suppose I'll say that I come into this, as you said, as a patient. I've had breast cancer twice, so I know exactly what it feels like to fight for your health. And as a patient, I wanted every tool that I could have to help me in my journey, and I found cannabis that way. I also worked with cannabis patients in California for 3 years before starting LEAFWELL, and I saw the profound impact cannabis had in their lives. And I think it was both that experience and also my own personal experience that really inspired me to start LEAFWELL. Honestly, I felt like I didn't have a choice. You know, there's millions of people who are benefiting from cannabis today, but there are millions more that could benefit that aren't yet benefiting. So I feel like we have so much work still to do. I feel like we've only done 10% of what we set out to do. You know, our mission is to increase access, education, and much needed research. We really need to better understand this plant and its utility as a medicine, and we are making great progress in that journey. But there's still so much work to do. You know, cannabis isn't a silver bullet, but its ability to support patients is really extraordinary. And so we're really excited about the work we're doing at LEAFWELL.
Yeah, education is the buzzword for me. There still is a lot of ignorance, you know. Now, in terms of sports, Dr. June, and athletic organizations, right? Like when you see the NCAA removing it as a banned substance for D1 athletes, or the NFL going to lengths to maybe reduce penalties for players, like, are you guys internally celebrating that because it sort of speaks to the evolution and the education of cannabis? And on a level like that, it sort of rings true with you guys internally in terms of what you guys are doing?
Absolutely. You know, we have 7 studies that are published or on the way of being publishing. And we know that cannabis enhances recovery. We know that it improves pain perception and mind-body awareness. So this makes us very, very excited, not only for the athletic space, but also for post-athletic space, for retired athletes. You know, what happens after a lifetime of chronic injury and acute injury.
So, Emily, you know, I heard you guys are providing some municipalities and their employees with some medical cannabis. Can you talk a little bit about what you guys are doing in Trenton, New Jersey?
Yes, absolutely. I think I'll start with just saying that employers today are really faced with 2 significant challenges. One is rising healthcare costs every single year, and the other are employees that are suffering from chronic pain, anxiety, mental health. And so we're really excited to be partnering with employers in New Jersey to offer cannabis care as a sponsored employer benefit, essentially enabling their employees to explore cannabis as an alternative to their prescription medication. This is truly exciting because it's systemic change, as you can imagine. You know, obviously, regulation has been moving forward in the US around the country, but still there's, you know, a significant number of people that could benefit from cannabis, and they are scared of trying cannabis because of fear of workplace repercussions. So now if your employer is saying to you, well, actually cannabis could be an alternative to your prescription medication, that changes it as an option for people. And that's essentially what we're doing with employers. And with anything, research is so important, and we're being very diligent about collecting data on the impact of employees using cannabis as an alternative. And the preliminary research is super promising. It's not just good for employees, it's also good for the organizations. You know, we're seeing a reduction in healthcare utilization. We're seeing a reduction in prescription medication. We're seeing an improvement in overall quality of life, a reduction in absenteeism. And so this isn't just about, offering patients an alternative. This also supports really the objectives and the challenges, helps employers with the challenges that they're faced with.
And Dr. June, we're seeing more athletes turn to medical cannabis to help them. Obviously, whether it's the stress of training or the bumps and bruises that you get over the course of your training, whether it's for a fight or maybe something else, what are some of the benefits of using cannabis? And are there, I guess, specific flowers that are better than others? I'm just kind of curious about that.
Yeah, I'd love to address that. I give an example. Some of my colleagues who, let's say, is not doesn't believe that cannabis can be a medicine will tell me, well, cannabis just numbs your emotions and it actually can break down that post-recovery cycle. And I don't agree with that because that's not what the science shows. So when we think of athletes and intense athletes, we think about how intense physical activity or acute stress, right? The body is flooded with adrenaline. Well, cannabis can help calm that sympathetic overdrive, reducing that jittery, that hyper alert state caused by adrenaline. So, for example, an athlete recovering after a high pressure game, or match can use cannabis to help regulate their heart rate, relax their muscles, decrease that inflammation, promote healing. When I think about brain injury, concussion, cannabis can actually protect the brain cells, reduce inflammation and oxidative stress. And study shows that it supports neuroplasticity and helps the brain form new connections for recovery. So when I think about utilizing cannabis as one of the toolboxes that athletes can use, it is really a game changer. It can actually enhance that recovery through relaxation and improve pain perception through mind-body awareness.
Emily Fisher, Dr. June Chin from LEAFWELL with us live here on the Anik and Florian podcast. I want to go back to the LEAFWELL employer program just for a second, because it's interesting for me to think about leaving Disney, right? So I'm working at ESPN. I was not drug tested at Disney for cannabis, right? It's a major company. You would think maybe Mickey Mouse, they would test me for cannabis. They did not. Then I joined the UFC and I was drug tested for cannabis. Now, I don't know if they still drug test here 14 years later, what the threshold might be. But when I think about, like, Emily, benefit packages potentially through an employer, right, that would actually have some sort of cannabis package, it just feels so distant in a positive way relative to 2011 when, they're trying to see if I smoked a joint once in the last month,
Yeah, absolutely. And this is really about giving people agency over their health. And so everything that we're doing is doctor-led, it's science-backed, it's personalized, and everything that we've done up until today has really positioned us uniquely to be able to offer this, because we're operating in 38 states, seeing thousands of patients every single month, following up with those patients. We've collected a significant amount of data, patient-reported outcomes. We've also been organizing the existing body of research out there to really start being able to provide this into organizations. So yeah, this is really about rethinking employer healthcare and employee healthcare. So yeah, I think it's really changing, rethinking healthcare and how we sort of look at cannabis.
Dr. June, what is it like teaching students about cannabis and LEAFWELL in your world right now? I know it's Syracuse and other places. And how different is it maybe than when you first got up in front of a student body, however many years ago?
It is very different because you can major in cannabis science. You can understand the pharmacokinetics behind it. Like you had asked about, what type of different flowers or different strains or chemovars are good for recovery. We can break it down to the clinical applications. A 38-year-old athlete with a history of chronic migraines, which flowers would be better compared to a 65-year-old that has 2 rotator cuff surgeries and are on 5 different medications. That person might have different reactions to cannabis medicine than your 38-year-old. And that's what the data has been giving us all these years. And it's nice to be able to talk to undergraduates and graduates and postgraduates alike, because at different ends of the cannabis spectrum, we can apply this medicine not only in healthcare, but in ancillary applications as well, with coaches, with physical therapy, occupational therapy. So the landscape has changed quite a bit.
So if you're someone who's listening to this, right, you can go to leafwell.com and we'll give you the details at the end of the interview. But maybe you're someone who at one point in time has been prescribed with a prescription drug that might be cocaine in pill form, right? But they're giving it to 13-year-olds who have ADHD. Like, what can you do, Emily, right now if you're someone out there and you maybe have been hesitant, but maybe you're hearing a talking head like me talk about it and you're somewhat receptive? Is it as simple, depending on your age and where you are, as going to leafwell.com?
Well, people have the ability anywhere in the world really to speak to a healthcare provider through LEAFWELL. So it's not just, there are people in places where cannabis is still not available to them, but they are perhaps interested in finding out more. They can come onto our platform and speak to a provider and learn more. They can obviously access information on our website. But if you are in a state where cannabis is legal, and you're interested in how cannabis could potentially help you, the first thing that I'd recommend is to go on our website, and we have a huge body of information, and if you want to, you can speak to a healthcare provider. We have over 100 healthcare providers that work on our platform, and over 30 different medical specialties as well. So if you want to speak to like me, I couldn't speak to any of the oncologists during my treatment about my cannabis use. So if you want to speak to an oncologist who is also a cannabis expert, you can do so. If you want to speak to a mental health expert, you can do so. And so I think that's really that's what I would sort of invite people to do. It's really bridging, someone who's curious, but maybe a little bit concerned. Maybe they're on medication and they want to understand the contraindications that could happen with the medication they're on. Our provider is extremely knowledgeable, and they are armed with all the data that we've been collecting over the last few years.
It's all incredible. Last thing, and I could never have foreseen a time when I could, admit this in a public forum, right? But my senior thesis that I wrote at Gettysburg College 25 years ago, how the media undermines American democracy. Right now, I was having anxiety I don't even know what I wrote, Dr. June. I know you're nodding your head in acknowledgement when I was done. No, I knew at the time what it was, but I dealt with my anxiety for that project with cannabis. And I sort of realized at that time that it was helping me in terms of my creative writing. And I come to you as a former print journalist who does so much writing for television. And I don't know if this is an unfair or selfish question, or I guess I just feel like it has not only helped my anxiety, but it also has been somewhat of a performance enhancer in terms of my ability to focus and maybe tap into a part of my creative brain that I wouldn't have otherwise tapped into. Is there any science or anything behind what I just said?
Yes, absolutely. Cannabis works on the endocannabinoid system, and that helps the body maintain homeostasis or equilibrium. So the ECS, or endocannabinoid system, interacts with brain receptors. So you figured out how it can help regulate stress, anxiety, and mood. So instead of numbing emotions, it actually allows patients to process emotions more calmly and thoughtfully.
It's interesting. It almost made me enjoy part of a process that inherently I wouldn't enjoy. All right. On Instagram, if you would like to follow along, at LEAFWELL_official, at Dr. June Chin. Emily, I didn't find a personal handle for you, but if it's out there, we will certainly graphically represent that. Dr. June Chin, Emily Fisher. I encourage everybody to go to leafwell.com/Anik. We'll pump that on the backside as well. Thank you guys, though, for joining us. And we look forward to the Green Corner, I guess, in a month or two. But thank you guys so much. Best of luck. And we're here to support in any way we can, of course.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, guys. Dr. June Chin and CEO Emily Fisher with us here on the Anik and Florian podcast. Don't forget, tell your friends and family about LEAFWELL. Use code Anik. You get 20% off. You want to sleep better. You want to relax. You want to be a creative writer, perform better across the board in your professional and personal life. Now's the time. You can get approved for your medical card in just minutes. LEAFWELL.com/Anik. LEAFWELL.com/Anik. All right.